Have you ever noticed that the things you want the most are the very things that seem to slip away from you? That the tighter you hold on, the more they seem to disappear between your fingers? You have done everything right. You have planned carefully, tried hard, stayed in control, refused to make mistakes. And yet something inside you never feels light. There is a quiet, constant tension, a low hum of fear that never quite goes away, a sense that everything must be held together or it will all fall apart. And the longer you live this way, the more it feels as though you are chasing something you can never quite reach. I want to tell you something tonight that goes against almost everything the world has taught you. What is exhausting you is not the wanting itself. It is the grip. It is the tension in the way you are holding what you want. Carl Jung spent much of his life studying this exact pattern, the way human beings, out of a deep and hidden fear, tighten their grip on the things they love and the outcomes they long for, and in doing so, unknowingly push those very things away. He understood that the need to control is almost never a sign of strength. It is far more often a mask worn by fear. And underneath that fear is a truth that, once you finally see it, can change the entire way you move through your life. I know how strange this must sound if you are someone who has always believed that control is the answer, that the harder you work and the more you manage, the better your life will be. That belief runs deep in all of us, because we are taught it from childhood, taught that success comes from effort and control, that the people who grip hardest are the ones who win. And there is a partial truth in it, enough to make it convincing. Effort does matter. Showing up does matter. But there is a point, and most of us passed it long ago, where the gripping stops helping and starts hurting, where the additional control no longer produces additional results, but instead begins to strangle the very things it was meant to secure. And almost no one is taught where that point is, or how to recognize when they have crossed it. So we keep applying the one strategy we know, gripping harder and harder, long past the point where it works, unable to understand why our increasing effort produces decreasing returns. Tonight is about recognizing that point, seeing where your gripping crossed from helpful into harmful, and learning the entirely different skill that works on the other side of it. The skill almost no one teaches, the skill of the open hand. Because here is the paradox that sits at the center of everything we are going to explore tonight. The things you want most do not come to you through force. They come to you through release. Not because wanting is wrong, and not because you should stop caring about what matters to you, but because the desperate, fearful grip you have on those things is the very thing standing between you and them. When you finally loosen that grip, when you stop trying to force life to move exactly the way you demand, something remarkable begins to happen. The tension drains out of you, the heart grows lighter, and the things you have been chasing so exhaustingly begin, at last, to find their own way toward you. Tonight, I am going to walk you through why this happens. I am going to show you why control is really fear in disguise, why gripping something tightly is the surest way to lose it, why you have confused forcing with trying, and what you are truly afraid of underneath it all. And most importantly, I am going to show you how to let go without giving up, how to hold the things you want with open hands instead of clenched fists, so that they finally have the space to come to you. Because letting go, in Jung's understanding, is not losing. It is not surrender in the sense of defeat. It is opening. It is returning to a deeper and steadier version of yourself, the version that no longer needs to control everything in order to feel safe. Stay with me all the way to the end, because what feels right now like the exhausting effort to hold your life together might actually be the very thing keeping the life you want just out of reach. And the moment you understand how to release it, everything begins to change. Let's begin with the thing hiding underneath all of your controlling, the thing you have probably never let yourself see clearly. But before we begin, I want to name something honestly, because it will help you hear everything that follows. Some part of you may already be resisting this message. Some part of you may be thinking, but if I let go, everything really will fall apart. I am the one holding it all together. If I loosen my grip, I will lose everything I have worked for. That voice is the voice of the fear itself, and it is worth acknowledging right at the start, because it will keep speaking up throughout this entire video. That voice genuinely believes that your grip is the only thing standing between you and disaster. It has believed this for a very long time, and it is not going to be quiet just because you have decided to let go. So I am not asking you to silence it or argue with it tonight. I am only asking you to consider, just for the length of this video, the possibility that it might be wrong. That the grip you believe is holding your life together might actually be the thing slowly crushing it. That the control you think is keeping you safe might be the very thing keeping you exhausted and stuck. Hold that possibility gently as we go, even as the fearful voice protests. Because by the end, I think you will see that the thing you have been most afraid to release is the thing whose release will finally set you free. Number 1. Control is fear wearing a mask. Let us begin with the truth that almost no one wants to hear about themselves. When you find yourself gripping tightly, needing to control the outcome, unable to tolerate uncertainty, refusing to let things unfold in their own way, you are not, in that moment, being strong. You are being afraid. And I know that is hard to hear, because control does not feel like fear from the inside. It feels responsible. It feels careful. It feels like the wise and prudent thing to do. But Jung understood that the compulsive need to control is one of the most common disguises that fear wears. And it is such a convincing disguise that most people carry it their entire lives without ever seeing what is underneath. Think about how control presents itself in your own mind. It never announces that it is fear. It never says, I am terrified of failing, so I am going to grip this as hard as I can. Instead, it speaks in reasonable, responsible language. It says, I need to be certain. I have to get this right. I cannot afford a mistake here. I just want to make sure everything goes well. These sound like the thoughts of a careful, competent person. But listen to what is underneath them. Underneath every one of them is a fear that has not been named. The fear of failing. The fear of being rejected. The fear of losing the thing you love. The fear that if you are not enough, if you do not control this perfectly, everything will fall apart and it will be your fault. Control is the armor fear puts on so that it can walk around in daylight without being recognized. Jung wrote something that cuts right to the heart of this. He observed that where love rules, there is no will to power, and where power dominates, love is missing, and that each is the shadow of the other. Sit with that for a moment, because it is one of the most important things he ever said about this pattern. When the need for control, the will to power, grows strong in us, it slowly pushes out trust, which is the ground that love grows in. We stop holding the things we want with calm, open presence, and we start holding them with tension and force. And the moment we do that, something fundamental changes in the way we love, the way we wait, the way we move through the world. Everything grows heavier. Everything grows more brittle, because control and trust cannot occupy the same space. The more you fill yourself with the need to control, the less room there is for the trust that would actually let you rest. Let me tell you about a man I will call Liam, whose story someone once shared with this channel. Liam was brilliant. He was hardworking, capable, the kind of person who seemed to have his life completely under control. And in his work, he controlled everything. Deadlines, outcomes, the way other people responded to him, all of it had to go exactly as he planned. He could not tolerate mistakes, his own or anyone else's, and he refused to let anything unfold outside of what he expected. From the outside, it looked like excellence. From the inside, Liam lived in a constant state of tension, a low, grinding anxiety that never let him rest. When a project did not go the way he wanted, he did not just feel disappointed, he panicked. And here is the strange thing that happened over time. The projects he gripped the hardest, the ones he needed most desperately to succeed, seemed to deliver less and less. Meanwhile, the people around him who worked more lightly, who held their work with less white-knuckled control, kept finding better opportunities, kept moving forward with an ease Liam could not understand. One day he said to me, in genuine frustration, "I do more than they do, so why do my results never turn out the way I want?" And that question holds the entire secret of this first sign. Liam believed his problem was a problem of effort. He thought that if his results were lacking, it must mean he was not trying hard enough, controlling enough, doing enough. But the problem was never the amount of his effort. The problem was the state he was in while he made it. He was working from fear, from tension, from a desperate need to prove himself and avoid failure. And that inner state leaked into everything he touched. It made him rigid where he needed to be flexible, reactive where he needed to be calm, controlling where he needed to trust. His effort was enormous, but it was poisoned at the source by the fear driving it. And no amount of effort can overcome the corrosion of the fear underneath it. This is what Jung understood so deeply. Human beings do not usually become controlling because they are strong or rational. They become controlling because somewhere underneath, often far below their awareness, they are afraid. And the fear does not show itself honestly. It does not step forward and admit that it is afraid of failure, or rejection, or loss. Instead, it cloaks itself in the reasonable language of responsibility and prudence. And from that hidden place, it quietly runs the show. You think you are living from clarity, from wisdom, from careful judgment, but underneath, you are being moved by an invisible fear that has convinced you its grip is your own good sense. So here is what I want you to begin to see about this first sign, and it is the beginning of everything that follows. The next time you feel that familiar tightening, that need to control, that inability to let something simply unfold, I want you to pause and ask yourself one honest question. What am I afraid of right now? Not what do I need to control, but what am I afraid of? Because underneath the control, there is always a fear, and the fear is the real thing. The control is just the mask. And you cannot begin to loosen your grip until you have looked honestly at the fear that is making you clench in the first place. This is the first practice, and it is deceptively simple. When you notice the grip, look for the fear underneath it. Name it. Just name it. Because a fear that is named begins, immediately, to lose a little of its power over you. And before we go deeper, let me ask you something simple. Because naming things out loud is part of how we loosen their grip. If you are feeling this already, if some part of you recognized itself the moment I described the grip, then take a breath and, down in the comments, simply write, "I am ready to let go." That is all. Not for me, but for yourself. As a small first act of release, a way of saying out loud that you are ready to stop holding on so tightly. Sometimes the act of naming where you are is the very thing that begins to move you forward. So if you are ready, write it, and then let's continue together into the deeper layers of why we grip and how we finally learn to open our hands. There is something worth understanding about why control produces the opposite of what it promises, because it dissolves the illusion that gripping is at least effective, even if it is stressful. Control promises order, but it very often produces chaos, because a person gripping too tightly becomes rigid, and rigidity cannot adapt to a changing world. Life is fluid, always moving, always presenting new situations that require flexibility and responsiveness. The person who grips tries to force every situation into a predetermined plan, and when reality inevitably differs from the plan, they cannot flow with it. They break, or they fight reality, or they exhaust themselves trying to force the world back into the shape they demanded. Meanwhile, the person who holds things lightly can move with what actually happens, can adjust, can find the opportunity in the unexpected. So the great irony is that control, which promises to make you master of your circumstances, actually makes you their prisoner, because you have made yourself unable to respond to anything that does not match your rigid plan. The one who lets go is far more genuinely in command of their life, not because they control it, but because they can move skillfully with whatever it brings. There is a trap to name in this first sign, and it is the trap of confusing healthy responsibility with fearful control, because they can look similar from the outside, but they come from completely different places. Healthy responsibility is doing what is genuinely yours to do, with care and diligence, from a grounded place. Fearful control is trying to manage things that are not yours to manage, out of terror that if you do not, disaster will strike. The mother who prepares a good meal for her child is being responsible. The mother who cannot let her adult child make a single decision without her intervention is gripping out of fear. The worker who does their job well is being responsible. The worker who cannot let a colleague handle anything because it must be done exactly their way is gripping. The line between them is not the amount of care, it is the presence of fear, and whether you are managing what is truly yours or trying to control what is not. As you loosen your grip, do not mistake the loosening for a call to become irresponsible or careless. You keep every bit of genuine responsibility. What you release is only the fearful attempt to control what was never yours to control in the first place. Responsibility stays, control goes, and learning to tell the difference is much of the work. Consider, for a moment, the true cost of a life spent gripping, because we rarely add it up. Think of all the energy you have spent, over the years, trying to control outcomes, manage other people, force situations, secure certainty. Think of the sleep you have lost to anxious planning, the peace you have sacrificed to worry, the presence you have missed because you were somewhere else in your mind, managing a future that had not happened yet. Think of the relationships strained by your control, the joy squeezed out of good moments by your inability to relax and simply be in them, the exhaustion that has become so constant you barely notice it anymore. The grip does not just cost you the specific things it pushes away, it costs you your life itself, the actual experience of living, which cannot happen fully in a body and mind that are perpetually clenched. This is the hidden price of control that no one adds up, the slow draining away of the very life you were trying to protect. And when you finally see this cost clearly, when you finally feel the full weight of what the gripping has taken from you, something shifts. The letting go stops feeling like a risk and starts feeling like a rescue. You are not giving something up, you are getting your life back. And there is a strange grief that often comes when a person first sees the true cost of their gripping. A grief for all the years spent clenched, all the moments missed, all the peace sacrificed to a control that was never even working. If that grief comes for you, let it. It is a healthy grief, the grief of waking up, and it is part of how you finally set the pattern down. You are grieving a way of living that took so much from you, and that grief is not a step backward. It is the honest acknowledgement of what the grip has cost, which is exactly what motivates you to finally release it. Do not rush past that grief, and do not judge yourself for the years you spent gripping, because you were doing the best you could with the fear you carried and the tools you had. You did not know another way. Now you are learning one. And the grief for the gripped years, fully felt, becomes the doorway into a different future. One where you will not have to keep paying the same terrible price, because you will finally have learned to hold your life with open hands. There is a signal your body has been sending you, probably for years, that you may have learned to ignore. It is the exhaustion, not the honest tiredness of good work, but a deeper, more permanent depletion, a weariness that sleep does not fix, a sense of being worn down to the bone by something you cannot quite name. That exhaustion is the sound of the grip. It is what it costs, physically and emotionally, to hold your whole life in a clenched fist all day, every day, for years. The human body was not designed to live in a permanent state of gripping, and when you force it to, it pays a price. In tension, in fatigue, in a nervous system that never gets to rest, because it is always braced against the next thing that might slip out of your control. If you have wondered why you are so tired, why the rest never seems to restore you, why you feel worn down in a way that does not match your life, consider that the answer might be the grip. And consider that the exhaustion is not a problem to be solved with more coffee or more sleep, but a message telling you that you have been holding on too tightly for too long, and that your whole system is begging you to open your hands and finally let it rest. Let me give you a second face for this, because control does not only wear the mask of the hard-driving perfectionist like Liam. There was a woman someone once described to me, a woman I will call Helen, whose control was almost invisible, even to herself, because it looked like love. Helen was the one who took care of everyone. She managed her family's schedules, anticipated everyone's needs, smoothed every problem before it could arise, held the entire emotional world of the people around her together through sheer vigilance. And she called it devotion. But underneath, Helen was gripping just as hard as Liam ever did, only she was gripping people instead of projects. She could not let her adult children make their own mistakes. She could not let a family member be upset without rushing to fix it. She could not tolerate the uncertainty of letting the people she loved simply live their own lives. And the fear underneath her caretaking was the same fear that drives all control. If she did not manage everything, something terrible would happen, and it would be her fault, and she would lose the love she was working so hard to secure. Helen's control did not look like control. It looked like care, but it was exhausting her, and it was quietly suffocating the very people she was trying to love. Before we go on, let me help you recognize whether this pattern is yours, because control is a master of disguise, and it hides inside things that look like virtues. You might be a gripper if you cannot relax until you know how something will turn out. If uncertainty makes you physically tense. If you replay conversations trying to control how you were perceived. If you cannot delegate because no one will do it exactly right. If you feel responsible for other people's feelings and rush to manage them. If you struggle to rest because resting means not controlling. If plans changing throws you into disproportionate distress. If you say you are just being careful, or just being responsible, or just taking care of everyone, but underneath the carefulness there is a tightness that never fully releases. If you recognize yourself in these, you are not a bad or weak person. You are a frightened one, gripping your life out of a fear you may never have fully seen. And seeing it is where the loosening begins. But naming the fear is only the beginning. Because once you start to see the fear underneath your control, you begin to notice something even more painful. The gripping itself, the very thing you are doing to keep what you want, is the thing that is driving it away. And that is the second sign, and it is one of the cruelest patterns in all of human life. Number 2. The tighter you grip, the more it slips away. There is a cruel irony built into the way control works, and once you see it, you can never unsee it. The tighter you hold on to something out of fear, the more you cause the very loss you are trying to prevent. Your grip does not protect the thing you love, Your grip is what damages it, and you spend your life caught in a terrible loop, losing the thing, gripping harder to stop the loss, and by gripping harder, causing more loss, which makes you grip harder still. It is one of the most painful cycles a human being can be trapped in, and almost everyone is trapped in it somewhere. Jung understood this pattern, and there is an old image that captures it perfectly. Imagine holding a handful of sand. If you hold it gently, with an open palm, the sand rests there, and it stays. But the moment you become afraid of losing it, the moment you squeeze your hand shut to keep it safe, the sand begins to pour out between your fingers. The tighter you clench, the faster it escapes. The very act of gripping, the very thing you do to keep the sand, is what makes you lose it. And the cruelest part is that as you watch it slipping away, your instinct is to squeeze even harder, which only makes it pour out faster. This is not a flaw in the sand. It is a flaw in the way you are holding it. The sand was willing to stay in an open hand. It could not survive a clenched fist. And notice something else about the sand, because it deepens the lesson. When you hold sand in an open palm, you are not doing nothing. You are still holding it. Your hand is still there, still supporting it, still present. Open-handed does not mean absent or careless. The sand rests on a hand that is engaged, attentive, present, simply not clenched. This is the subtle thing that people miss when they first hear about letting go. They think the choice is between the clenched fist and the empty, absent hand, between desperate gripping and total abandonment. But there is a third way, the open hand that is still present, still holding, still caring, just without the crushing grip. This is how you hold everything that matters. Your relationships, held on an open, present palm, cared for and attended to but not clenched. Your goals, held with engaged effort but without the strangling grip. Your life, held with full presence and full care, but with an open hand rather than a closed fist. The open hand is not the absence of holding. It is a different, wiser, gentler way of holding. One that supports without crushing, cares without controlling, and gives the thing you love the one thing a clenched fist never can: room to breathe and room to stay. This is exactly how it works with the things you love and the outcomes you long for. Nowhere is it more visible than in relationships. When you begin to need another person in order to feel complete, when your fear of losing them takes over, you stop seeing them as they truly are and start seeing them as something you must keep, and everything shifts. You become hypersensitive to every small change in them, every shift in their tone, every moment of distance. You worry more, you react more, you cling more. And this tightening, this fearful grip, is exactly what drains the naturalness and ease out of the relationship. It is not that you love them wrongly. It is that you are loving them from fear, and fear always brings the need to control, and control slowly suffocates the very closeness you are so desperate to keep. The person did not need to leave, but it is very hard to stay freely inside a grip that is squeezing tighter every day. This is worth understanding deeply, because it is where the grip causes some of its greatest pain, in the very relationships we most want to keep. When you grip a person out of fear, you change the nature of the relationship without meaning to. What began as love becomes surveillance. What began as closeness becomes pressure. The other person, who is drawn to you by your warmth, now feels the weight of your fear, the constant testing, the anxious need for reassurance, the monitoring of their every move for signs of withdrawal. And the terrible irony is that this gripping produces exactly the withdrawal it fears, because no one can breathe inside a grip, and the natural human response to being gripped is to pull away in search of air. So the very behavior driven by the fear of losing them becomes the thing that drives them away, and the more they pull away, the more the fear intensifies, and the tighter the grip becomes, and the cycle accelerates toward the loss it was trying to prevent. The only way to break it is the hardest thing of all: to loosen your grip precisely on the person you are most afraid to lose, to give them room precisely when every instinct screams to hold tighter, to trust precisely when trust feels impossible. But this is the only thing that gives the relationship a chance to breathe. And a relationship that can breathe is the only kind that can truly last. Let me tell you about a woman I will call Sarah. Sarah had met someone she truly cared about. Someone who at first was drawn to her warmth and her ease. But underneath, Sarah carried a deep fear of being abandoned, a fear she had carried since long before she met him. And as the relationship grew, that fear woke up. She began to need constant reassurance. She noticed every small change in his messages, every slight shift in his attention, and read catastrophe into all of it. She began to grip. She wanted to know where he was, what he was thinking, whether he still felt the same. And the more she gripped, the more the ease drained out of the relationship. The very naturalness that had drawn him to her began to disappear, replaced by tension, by anxiety, by a heaviness that made every interaction feel like a test. Sarah was not doing anything wrong out of malice. She was doing exactly what fear tells us to do. She was holding on tighter to keep from losing him, and the tighter she held, the more she felt him slipping away, which made her hold tighter still. She was pouring the sand out with the very hand that was trying to keep it. Here is what Jung would want you to understand about this. The problem in Sarah's relationship was never the depth of her love. Love was not the problem. The problem was the fear that had attached itself to her love and the grip that fear produced. When we love from a place of lack, from the fear that we are not complete without this person, we cannot help but grip, because we are not just loving them, we are using them to fill an emptiness inside ourselves. And a person can feel the difference. Being loved freely feels like warmth. Being gripped out of fear feels like weight. And over time, weight is exhausting to carry, no matter how much the person cares for you. The grip does not communicate love. It communicates fear. And fear, even fear born of love, slowly pushes people away. And this is not only true of relationships. It is true of everything you try to hold through tension. It is true of your work. When you grip the outcome so tightly out of the fear of failing that you lose the flexibility and creativity that would have let you succeed. It is true of your goals. When you clench around them so hard that the very tension chokes the life out of the pursuit. It is true of your image, your reputation, your sense of security, anything you try to preserve through fearful control. The law is the same everywhere. What you grip out of fear, you slowly strangle. Not because it was never yours, but because the way you are holding it does not allow it to breathe, and nothing living can survive without room to breathe. So here is the practice for this second sign, and it builds directly on the first. Once you have named the fear underneath your grip, I want you to try something that will feel counterintuitive and even frightening at first. In the smallest, safest ways you can find, practice loosening your hold, not letting go of responsibility, not abandoning what you care about, but releasing the tension in how you hold it. When you feel yourself gripping a relationship, practice giving the person a little room, a little trust, a little space to simply be themselves without your anxious monitoring. When you feel yourself gripping an outcome at work, practice doing your best and then genuinely releasing your stranglehold on how it must turn out. Start small, because the fear will resist. But every time you loosen the grip even slightly, you will notice something. The thing you were strangling begins, just a little, to breathe again. And in that breathing room, the closeness and the ease you were so desperate to force begin, quietly, to return on their own. There was a man someone told me about, a man I will call Marcus. whose gripping showed up not in relationships but in his own body and health. Marcus had become so afraid of illness, so determined to control every possible risk, that his entire life narrowed around the management of his health. He tracked everything, worried over every symptom, controlled his diet and routine with an anxious rigidity that left no room for spontaneity or joy. And the cruel irony was exactly the one we have been describing. The constant stress of his gripping, the perpetual anxiety of trying to control the uncontrollable, was doing more damage to his health than almost anything he was trying to prevent. His fear of losing his well-being was destroying his well-being. He was squeezing the sand so hard that it poured through his fingers. Only when Marcus began to loosen his grip, to accept that he could not control every variable, to hold his health with care but without terror, did he begin to actually feel well again, because the tension itself had been the illness. The reason this second pattern traps people so completely is the feedback loop built into it. When you grip something and it starts to slip, the slipping triggers more fear, and more fear triggers a tighter grip, and the tighter grip causes more slipping, and around it goes, each turn of the cycle tightening the trap. People get caught in this loop for years, sometimes for their whole lives, because every instinct they have tells them the solution to losing something is to hold it tighter. It is the most natural response in the world, and it is exactly wrong. The way out of the loop is the one thing the fear will never suggest, which is to loosen the grip precisely when everything in you is screaming to tighten it. That is the counterintuitive move that breaks the cycle. Not gripping harder when you feel the loss, but gently, deliberately, opening the hand. It feels like the most dangerous thing you could possibly do. It is actually the only thing that works. You can recognize which relationships and situations you are gripping by noticing where the tension lives in your life. Where do you feel that you cannot relax, cannot trust, cannot let things simply be? Where do you find yourself monitoring, checking, managing, controlling? Where does the fear of loss make you tighten? These are the places you are gripping, and they are usually the places that matter most to you, because we grip hardest exactly where we are most afraid to lose. The paradox is that the things we care about most are the things we are most likely to damage with our gripping, precisely because our fear of losing them is greatest. So look honestly at where your grip is tightest, and understand that this is not a sign of how much you love, but of how much you fear, and that the very intensity of your grip on these precious things may be the thing quietly endangering them. The place where you are gripping hardest is usually the place most in need of your open hand. This same gripping shows up in the way we try to hold on to the future itself, to certainty, to a guaranteed sense of how things will turn out. Many people spend enormous energy trying to grip the future, running endless scenarios in their minds, trying to plan for every possibility, trying to secure a guarantee that things will be okay. And this gripping of the future is just as futile and just as exhausting as gripping a person or an outcome, because the future is not a thing that can be held. It has not happened yet. It cannot be controlled in advance. And the attempt to grip it, to force certainty out of something that is inherently uncertain, produces nothing but anxiety. The endless spinning of a mind trying to nail down what cannot be nailed down. The relief comes only when you accept that the future cannot be gripped, that uncertainty is simply the nature of being alive, and that you can meet whatever comes when it actually comes, rather than trying to control it before it arrives. The person who releases their grip on the future is not being irresponsible. They are simply recognizing the truth that the future was never theirs to hold, and that trying to hold it was only stealing peace from their present. But to truly loosen your grip, you have to understand something about the difference between two things that look almost identical from the outside, but are completely different underneath. The The difference between forcing and trying. Because most people who hear this message make a terrible mistake. They think letting go means they have to stop caring, stop trying, stop pursuing what they want. And that is not it at all. That is the third sign, and understanding it will free you from a confusion that traps almost everyone. Number 3, you have confused forcing with trying. There is a confusion at the heart of this whole subject that traps almost everyone, and until you untangle it, nothing else will make sense. It is the confusion between forcing and trying. Because when people first hear that they need to let go, that their grip is pushing away what they want, they panic. They think it means they have to stop caring, stop working, stop pursuing their dreams, sit back passively, and wait for life to hand them things. And that is not it at all. That is a complete misunderstanding, and it keeps people from ever actually letting go, because they are terrified that letting go means giving up. So let us be very clear about this, because it changes everything. Letting go does not mean you stop trying. It means you stop forcing, and forcing and trying are not the same thing. They are, in fact, almost opposites. Trying is effort that flows from a steady inner place. It is doing your best, pouring yourself into what matters, working hard toward what you want, but from a foundation of trust rather than fear. Trying does not need to control the outcome, because it does not believe that its entire worth depends on the outcome. It gives everything it has, and then it allows the results to be what they will be. Forcing is different. Forcing is effort that flows from fear. It is not just doing your best. It is desperately needing a particular result because you believe you cannot survive without it, because you believe your worth depends on it, because you are terrified of what will happen if it does not go your way. Forcing grips the outcome with white knuckles. Trying holds it with open hands. Both involve effort, sometimes enormous effort. But the inner state behind them is completely different, and that inner state changes everything about the result. Jung understood that how you do something matters as much as the fact that you do it. Two people can perform the exact same action, put in the exact same hours, make the exact same effort, and get completely different results, because one is acting from trust and the other from fear. The one acting from fear is rigid, reactive, unable to adapt, so afraid of mistakes that they cannot take the creative risks that success requires. The one acting from trust is flexible, responsive, able to flow with what happens, willing to make mistakes and learn from them, capable of the ease that lets a person do their very best work. Same effort, opposite states, opposite results. This is why Liam, who worked so hard and controlled so tightly, kept losing to people who seemed to work more lightly. It was never about the amount of effort. It was about the fear poisoning his. Let me tell you about a woman I will call Elena, an artist, so you can feel the difference clearly. For years, Elena made her art from a place of forcing. She needed each piece to be perfect. She needed it to prove she was talented, to justify her calling herself an artist, to protect her from the terror of being ordinary. And because she gripped every piece so tightly, so desperately, her work became stiff and lifeless. The fear leaked into every brushstroke. She could not take risks, because a risk might fail, and a failure might expose her as a fraud. So she played it safe, controlled everything, and produced work that was technically fine and completely dead. Then, something shifted. Through a long and painful process, Elena began to let go, not of her art, not of her effort, but of her desperate need for each piece to prove her worth. She kept working just as hard, but now she worked from a different place, a place that could tolerate imperfection, that could take risks, that could let the work be what it wanted to be. And her art came alive. It became free, surprising, genuinely good. in a way it never could have been while she was strangling it with her need. She did not try less, she forced less. And that made all the difference. This is the crucial distinction, and I want you to hold it tightly, because it dissolves the fear that keeps people from letting go. You do not have to choose between caring and letting go. You do not have to stop pursuing what you want in order to release your grip on it. What you have to release is not the desire and not the effort. What you have to release is the fear driving them, the desperate need that turns healthy pursuit into anxious forcing. You can want something with your whole heart and still hold it with open hands. You can work toward a goal with everything you have and still release your stranglehold on how it must turn out. In fact, that is exactly the state in which you are most likely to succeed, because you are giving your full effort without the fear that sabotages it. So here is the practice for this third sign. The next time you are pursuing something that matters to you, I want you to check the state you are pursuing it from. Ask yourself, am I trying or am I forcing? Am I doing my best from a place of trust, or am I gripping this outcome from a place of fear? And if you notice the fear, the forcing, the desperate need, do not stop pursuing the thing. Just work on changing the state you are pursuing it from. Take a breath. Remind yourself that your worth does not depend on this outcome. Remind yourself that you can give your best and still allow the result to be what it will be. Keep the effort. Release the fear. Keep the trying. Drop the forcing. You can tell whether you are trying or forcing by how it feels in your body and your mind. Trying feels effortful but clean. There is exertion, but underneath it there is a kind of steadiness, a groundedness, a sense that you are giving your best and that will be enough regardless of the result. Forcing feels different. It feels tight, frantic, desperate. There is a clenching in it, a sense that everything depends on this, a background terror that will not quiet down. Trying can rest when the work is done. Forcing cannot rest, ever, because the fear never turns off. Trying can accept a disappointing result and keep going. Forcing shatters at a disappointing result, because its whole sense of worth was riding on it. If you want to know which one you are in, check for the fear. If there is a desperate, clenching terror underneath your effort, you are forcing. If there is a steady, grounded willingness underneath it, you are trying. And the good news is that you can shift from one to the other without changing a single thing about your actual effort, simply by addressing the fear that has turned your trying into forcing. You have probably experienced the difference between trying and forcing directly, even if you never named it, in any activity that requires both skill and ease. Think of anyone who performs under pressure, an athlete, a musician, a speaker. When they are forcing, when they are gripped by the fear of failing, they tighten up, they lose their fluidity, they make mistakes they would never make in practice, because the fear has stolen the ease that skill requires. The harder they try to force a good performance, the worse it gets, because forcing and skill cannot coexist. But when they let go, when they trust their training and stop gripping the outcome, they enter a state of flow, and suddenly everything works. The skill returns, the performance soars, precisely because they stopped forcing it. The athlete who is loose outperforms the athlete who is tight, every time, even when the tight one wants it more. This is not just true in sports and music. It is true in every area of life where you are trying to perform, to create, to connect, to succeed. The fear that makes you grip is the very thing that sabotages you, and the trust that lets you release is the very thing that lets you excel. You do your best work not when you are gripping hardest, but when you have let go enough to let your actual ability flow. It helps to remember that the ease we are describing is not laziness or indifference. It is a very particular kind of engaged relaxation that peak performers in every field have always known. The great artists, athletes, and thinkers are not the ones gripping hardest. They are the ones who have learned to combine full commitment with deep ease, to care enormously about their work while holding it lightly enough to let it flow. This combination, intense engagement without anxious gripping, is the state in which human beings do their very best work, and it is available to you too, in whatever you do. It is not about caring less. It is about caring fully while trusting more, about pouring yourself into the work while releasing your stranglehold on the outcome. The moment you find this state, you will understand why forcing always fell short, because forcing is the enemy of the very flow that excellence requires. And you will understand why the people who seemed to try less sometimes achieved more, because they had found the ease that lets ability express itself fully, an ease that fear and forcing make impossible. Think of the difference between swimming against a current and swimming with it. The person who forces is like a swimmer fighting the river, exhausting themselves against the current, making desperate progress at enormous cost, and often being swept backward anyway. The person who tries from a place of trust is like a swimmer who works with the water, using the current rather than fighting it, applying skill and effort but in harmony with the river rather than in war against it. Both are swimming. Both are working hard. But one is fighting reality and one is flowing with it. And the difference in both the result and the exhaustion is enormous. So much of forcing is really fighting the current, insisting that life flow in the direction you demand, rather than working skillfully with the direction it is actually moving. And letting go is not stopping swimming. It is stopping the exhausting war against the current, and learning instead to swim with the river of your actual life, applying your effort in harmony with what is real, rather than in desperate opposition to it. You still swim. You still work, but you stop drowning yourself in the fight against a current you were never going to defeat. It is worth pausing on why this is so hard to believe, because the disbelief is what keeps people forcing long after it has stopped working. Everything in our culture tells us that more effort equals more results, that the person who wants it most and works hardest and grips tightest will win. And so when our forcing stops producing results, our instinct is never to force less. It is always to force more, because we have been taught that insufficient results mean insufficient effort. This is the trap. We cannot imagine that the problem is the forcing itself, so we respond to the failure of forcing with even more forcing, digging ourselves deeper into the very hole we are trying to climb out of. Breaking this pattern requires a genuine leap of faith, a willingness to try the thing that feels completely wrong, to respond to a slipping grip by loosening rather than tightening. It goes against every instinct. It goes against everything you were taught, and that is exactly why so few people ever discover it, and why those who do find it so life-changing. The answer was never to grip harder. It was always, from the beginning, to open the hand. But almost no one can believe that until they finally, in desperation or exhaustion, try it and discover that the thing they were most afraid to do was the thing that set them free. Because the goal was never to make you stop wanting your life. The goal is to let you pursue it from a place that does not sabotage the very thing you are reaching for. There was a woman someone described to me, a woman I will call Nadia, whose whole struggle lived in this exact confusion. Nadia had heard, somewhere along the way, that she needed to let go, to stop being so attached, to release her grip on her ambitions. And she took it to mean she should stop wanting, stop striving, stop caring so much. So she tried to make herself not want the things she wanted. She tried to become detached in the cold sense, to pretend she did not care about her dreams, and it made her miserable, because she was not actually letting go. She was suppressing, and suppression is just another kind of forcing, the forcing of yourself into a false indifference. Her real desires did not disappear. They just went underground and festered. What Nadia finally understood was that letting go had never meant killing her desire. It meant keeping the desire while releasing the fear wrapped around it. She was allowed to want her dreams with her whole heart. She just did not have to grip them in terror. When she finally learned that distinction, she came alive again, pursuing what she loved with full passion but without the fear that had either driven her into forcing or, in her confused attempt at detachment, into deadening herself. There is a trap in this third sign worth naming, because it catches many sincere people. It is the trap of using the language of letting go as a cover for giving up. When something is hard, when the effort is uncomfortable, when success is uncertain, there is a powerful temptation to quit and call it wisdom, to abandon the pursuit and tell yourself, you are just letting go, just detaching, just releasing your attachment to outcomes. But that is not letting go. That is surrender in the sense of defeat, and it is important to be honest with yourself about the difference. True letting go keeps the effort and releases the fear. False letting go uses spiritual language to justify releasing the effort. The test is simple. After you let go, do you keep showing up, keep working, keep pursuing from a lighter place? Then it was real letting go. Or did you use letting go as permission to stop trying entirely? Then it was giving up wearing a disguise. Be honest with yourself about which one you are doing, because the fear that drives forcing and the laziness that drives quitting can both hide behind the beautiful words of letting go. But to release the fear that drives your forcing, you have to know what that fear actually is. You have to go underneath the control, underneath the grip, all the way down to the thing you are truly afraid of. And it is almost never what you think it is. That is the fourth sign, and it takes us into the deepest root of the entire pattern. Number 4, what you are really afraid of underneath it all. We have to go deeper now, underneath the control, underneath the grip, underneath the forcing, all the way down to the fear that is driving the whole thing. Because everything we have talked about so far, all the gripping and controlling and forcing, is being generated by a fear that lives far below your everyday awareness. And until you meet that fear directly, you will keep gripping, no matter how many times you tell yourself to let go, because the fear will keep generating the grip faster than you can release it. So what is it? What are you actually afraid of, underneath all of it? For most people, when they finally trace the fear all the way down, they find the same thing waiting at the bottom. It is not really the fear of losing the relationship, or failing at the goal, or not getting the outcome. Those are the surface fears. Underneath them is something deeper and older. It is the fear that if these things do not go your way, it will mean something terrible about you, that you are not enough, that you are unworthy, that you are unlovable, that if you fail here, if you lose this, if this does not work out, it will confirm the thing you have most feared about yourself all along, the secret belief that you are somehow not good enough to deserve the life you want. That is the fear at the bottom, and it is the engine that drives all the controlling. Jung understood that this deep fear of not being enough is one of the most powerful forces in the human psyche, and that most of our compulsive behaviors are attempts to manage it. We grip the relationship because if they leave, it will prove we are unlovable. We control the outcome because, if we fail, it will prove we are inadequate. We force the goal because if we do not achieve it, it will confirm we are worthless. In every case, the thing we are gripping is not really the thing we are afraid of losing. It is a symbol, a proof, a piece of evidence we are using to argue against the deep belief that we are not enough. And that is why we grip so hard, with such desperation, far out of proportion to the thing itself. We are not fighting for a relationship or a job or an outcome. We are fighting, underneath, for our own sense of worth. And no wonder we cannot let go, because it feels like letting go of the outcome means accepting the terrible verdict about ourselves that we have spent our whole lives running from. Let me tell you about a man I will call Thomas. Thomas gripped everything: his career, his relationships, his image, his plans, all of it, with a desperate, exhausting intensity. And when he finally began to look underneath the grip, in the honest way this work requires, he found something that surprised him. Underneath every single grip was the same fear, and it went all the way back to his childhood. Thomas had grown up believing that he was only valuable when he achieved, when he performed, when he got everything right. Love, in his early world, had felt conditional, earned, always at risk of being withdrawn if he was not good enough. And so he had learned, at a very deep level, that he had to control everything, achieve everything, never fail at anything, because his very worth depended on it. His adult gripping was not really about his adult goals at all. It was a frightened child still trying to earn the love he had never felt was safe. And once Thomas saw that, once he traced the grip all the way down to the wound underneath it, something began to loosen, because he finally understood that he was not fighting for a promotion or a relationship. He was fighting an old false belief that he had never been worthy in the first place. This is what Jung would want you to see. The grip is never really about the thing you are gripping. It is about the fear underneath. And the fear underneath is almost always some version of, I am not enough. And here is why this matters so much. You cannot release a grip while the fear that generates it is still running unseen in the dark. You can tell yourself to let go 1,000 times, but as long as some part of you believes that your worth depends on this outcome, you will keep gripping, because to that part of you, letting go feels like death. The only way to truly loosen the grip is to go down and meet the fear, to see the false belief that is driving it, and to begin, slowly, to build a sense of your own worth that does not depend on controlling any particular outcome. When you no longer need the thing to prove you are enough, you can finally hold it with open hands, because your worth is no longer riding on it. There was a woman someone told me about, a woman I will call Claire, who traced her gripping all the way down to its root and found something she had never expected. Claire gripped relationships with a desperate intensity, terrified of abandonment, controlling and clinging in a way that exhausted everyone around her. And when she finally looked underneath, in the honest and difficult way this work requires, she found a small child who had learned, very early, that love could vanish without warning. Somewhere in her childhood, love had been unreliable, present one moment and gone the next. And the child she had been had drawn the only conclusion a child can draw, that she had to hold on with everything she had or she would be left. That terrified child was still running Claire's adult relationships, still gripping every person as if they might vanish at any moment, still trying to control the uncontrollable in a desperate bid to never feel that original abandonment again. And when Claire finally saw this, finally met the frightened child underneath her adult grip, something shifted. She understood that she was not really fighting to keep her current partner. She was fighting a decades-old terror that had nothing to do with him. And that understanding was the beginning of her freedom, because you cannot heal a wound you cannot see. And once she could see it, she could finally begin to give that frightened child the safety she had been desperately seeking in everyone else. The reason this fourth sign is where so many people stay stuck is that the fear underneath is genuinely painful to face. It is much easier to keep gripping the outcomes than to go down and meet the belief that you are not enough, because that belief hurts, and everything in you wants to avoid it. So people spend their whole lives managing the surface, gripping relationship after relationship, outcome after outcome, goal after goal, never once going down to the root that is generating all of it. And because they never address the root, the gripping never stops. No matter how many times they resolve to let go, the only way through is down. You have to be willing to feel the fear you have been running from, to meet the belief that you are not enough, to sit with the wound instead of endlessly trying to outrun it through control. It is the hardest thing, and it is the only thing that finally works. Because a grip generated by an unfaced fear can only be released by facing the fear. And here is the tender truth at the very bottom of this, the thing that finally makes the release possible. The belief that you are not enough, the belief driving all your gripping, is not true. It never was. It was installed in you, usually very early, usually by circumstances that had nothing to do with your actual worth. A child concludes they are not enough, not because it is true, but because love was conditional, or attention was scarce, or they were compared, or criticized, or made to feel that they had to earn their place. The belief is a scar from an old wound, not an accurate assessment of your value, and you can begin, slowly, to heal it, not by achieving enough to finally prove it wrong, because no achievement is ever enough to satisfy a wound like that, but by going back and offering that frightened part of you the thing it never received, the recognition that it was always enough, that it did not have to earn its worth, that it was worthy simply by existing the way every child is. This is the deepest work of letting go, deeper than releasing any particular outcome. It is the release of the false belief that has been generating all your grips, the slow, patient healing of the wound that told you that you were not enough. And as that wound heals, the gripping loosens on its own, everywhere in your life, because you no longer need to control any outcome to prove a worth that you have finally begun to feel from the inside. You can find the fear underneath your grip by following it down with a simple question, asked again and again. When you notice yourself gripping something, ask, "What am I afraid will happen if I let go of this?" And whatever answer comes, ask again, "And if that happened, what would that mean? And if that happened, what would that mean about me?" Keep following the chain down, and it will almost always lead you to the same place. Some version of, "It would mean I am not enough, not worthy, not lovable, not safe." That is the bedrock fear, the one generating all the grips. And simply seeing it clearly, tracing your gripping all the way down to the belief at the bottom, begins to loosen its power, because so much of its power came from operating in the dark, unseen and unexamined. When you drag the fear into the light and look at it directly, you often find that it is an old belief, installed long ago, that does not actually reflect the truth of who you are. And that recognition is the beginning of freedom from it. And I want to say something gentle about the part of you that grips, because it is easy, once you understand all this, to start attacking yourself for your controlling, to add self-judgment on top of the fear. But the part of you that grips is not your enemy, and it does not deserve your contempt. It is a frightened part, often a very young part, that learned long ago that gripping was how to stay safe. It has been working hard, all these years, doing the only thing it knew how to do to protect you. It gripped because it was scared, and it was scared because something taught it that the world was not safe and that it had to control everything to survive. This part of you does not need to be attacked or defeated. It needs to be understood, thanked for its long labor, and gently reassured that it is safe now, that it can rest, that it does not have to hold everything together anymore. When you meet your own gripping with this kind of compassion rather than judgment, something softens that no amount of force could ever soften. The frightened part, finally feeling understood rather than attacked, begins to relax its grip on its own, the way a scared child finally relaxes when they feel truly safe. You cannot force this part to let go, but you can make it feel safe enough that it chooses to. And there is a way to begin offering that safety, small and concrete, that you can start today. Each time you catch yourself gripping an outcome because your worth depends on it, pause and offer the frightened part of you a different message. Not, I have to achieve this or I am nothing, but I would like this and I am already enough, whether it comes or not. Say it even if you do not fully believe it yet, because the belief follows the practice more often than it precedes it. You are not trying to convince yourself with a single affirmation. You are slowly, through thousands of small repetitions, offering the frightened part of you a new message to replace the old one it has been running for decades. The old message said your worth is conditional, earned, always at risk. The new message says your worth is inherent, unconditional, not up for negotiation based on any outcome. This does not sink in overnight, but said again and again, in the small moments when the grip arises, it slowly begins to reach the deep place where the old belief lives and to loosen its hold. And as the belief that you are not enough begins to weaken, the grip it was generating weakens with it, until one day you notice that you wanted something, did not get it, and remained whole, remained worthy, remained yourself. That is the moment you will know the healing is real, the moment a disappointment arrives and does not shatter your sense of worth, because your worth was never resting on the outcome in the first place. I want to pause here for just a moment, because we are halfway through, and this is the deepest part of the whole journey, and I do not want you to walk through it alone. If any of this is landing, if you have recognized your own grip, your own control, your own fear in these words, then I want you to do one small thing. Down in the comments, leave a single word for what you are ready to release. Say control if you are ready to loosen your grip on the outcomes. Say fear if you have finally seen what is underneath. Say trust if you are learning to hold your life with open hands. Or say enough if you are ready to stop letting your worth depend on things going your way. Leave that one word not for me, but for the next person who scrolls down and needs to know that someone else is learning to let go too. Because so many people are gripping their lives in silence, each one convinced they are the only one, each one exhausted by a fear they have never spoken aloud. Your single word might be the thing that helps another person finally set their grip down. Now let's keep going, because once you understand the fear underneath the grip, you can finally begin the real work, which is learning what it actually means to let go, and it is not what most people think. That is the fifth sign, and it corrects the single biggest misunderstanding about this entire subject. Number 5. Letting go is not giving up. Here is the single greatest misunderstanding about this entire subject, the one that keeps people trapped for years. They believe that letting go means giving up, that releasing their grip means surrendering their dreams, abandoning their desires, becoming passive, no longer caring about the things that matter to them. And because that sounds like a kind of death, they refuse to let go, and they keep gripping, exhausted and afraid, because the only alternative they can imagine is giving up entirely. So I want to correct this misunderstanding completely, because it is the thing standing between most people and the freedom they are looking for. Letting go is not giving up. In many ways, it is the opposite of giving up. It is the deepest form of trust a human being can practice. When you give up, you stop caring. You withdraw your energy, your effort, your desire. You decide the thing is not worth pursuing, and you turn away from it. That is not what we are talking about. Letting go is something completely different. When you let go, you keep caring, you keep desiring, you may even keep working hard. What you release is not the desire and not the effort. What you release is the fearful, controlling grip, the desperate need for it to happen exactly your way, on your timeline, according to your demands. You keep the love, You drop the fear. You keep the pursuit. You drop the desperation. You keep the goal. You release the stranglehold on how and when it must come. Letting go is not turning away from what you want. It is turning toward it with open hands instead of clenched fists. Jung understood letting go not as surrender in the sense of defeat, but as a kind of trust, a willingness to allow life to participate in the outcome rather than demanding you control every part of it yourself. When you grip everything, you are essentially saying that you alone must make it happen, that you cannot trust anything outside your own control, that if you relax your grip for even a moment, everything will fall apart. That is an exhausting way to live. And it is also, if you look at it honestly, a kind of arrogance, the belief that you alone must hold the entire world together through the force of your will. Letting go is the humble and freeing recognition that you are not the only force at work in your life, that there are currents and timings and possibilities far larger than your control, that sometimes the path you are forcing closed is not the only path, and that life may be trying to lead you somewhere better than the narrow outcome you are gripping. Let me tell you about a woman I will call Grace. For years, Grace gripped a single vision of how her life was supposed to go. A specific career, a specific timeline, a specific picture of success that she pursued with relentless, forcing intensity. And when that path kept not opening, no matter how hard she forced it, she experienced it as total failure, as proof that she was inadequate, and she gripped even harder, growing more and more exhausted and bitter. Then, through a long and difficult process, Grace finally let go. Not of her desire for a meaningful life, but of her desperate grip on that one specific picture of what it had to look like. She released the demand that it happen her way, on her timeline. And in the space that opened up when she stopped forcing, she began to notice opportunities she had been completely blind to before. Paths she had never considered because she was so fixated on the one she was forcing. Her life did not become meaningless when she let go. It became larger. Consider how often this pattern appears in the stories people tell about their own lives. Once they look back with honest eyes, the job that came only after they stopped desperately chasing it, the relationship that arrived the moment they finally made peace with being alone, the creative breakthrough that appeared right after they gave up forcing it and went for a walk, the healing that began when they finally stopped fighting their pain and simply allowed it. Over and over, in life after life, the same shape repeats. The thing arrived not during the frantic gripping, but in the open space that appeared after the gripping was released. This is so common that it has become a kind of quiet wisdom, passed down in sayings and proverbs across every culture, the recognition that what you chase runs from you, and what you release often returns. People have noticed this pattern for thousands of years, even without understanding the psychology underneath it. And the psychology is exactly what we have been describing. The grip repels and blinds and strangles. The open hand invites and reveals and gives room, so the thing could not come while you were gripping, and could only arrive once you opened your hand. Not magic, just the simple, consistent truth about how the things we want actually reach us, which is almost never through force, and almost always through the openness that force makes impossible. The letting go did not cost her the good life she wanted. It was the very thing that finally allowed it to arrive, in a form better than the one she had been strangling. This is what Jung understood about the strange generosity of letting go. When you force life to move in one particular direction, you unknowingly close yourself off to all the other directions that might suit you far better. You see only the one path you are gripping, and when it does not open, you believe you are failing, when in reality life may be trying to lead you somewhere you cannot yet see. The grip narrows your world down to a single outcome, Letting go widens it back out to all the possibilities you were blind to. This is why so often, the thing people most wanted came to them only after they finally released their grip on it, or came in a form they never expected, better than the one they had been forcing. Not because letting go is a magic trick to get what you want, but because the grip itself was blinding you and choking off the very life that was trying to reach you. So here is the practice for this fifth sign. I want you to take the thing you are gripping most tightly right now, the outcome you most desperately need, and I want you to practice holding it differently. Not giving it up, not abandoning it, but loosening your demand that it happen your way, on your schedule, according to your exact picture. Say to yourself, I deeply want this, and I am willing to work for it, and I am also willing to let it come in its own way and its own time, and willing to let life surprise me with something even better than I can imagine. This is not resignation, it is trust. It is the difference between demanding life give you exactly what you picture and opening yourself to receive what is actually trying to come to you. There is a humility in this that is worth dwelling on, because it is the ground the whole thing rests on. When you grip a specific outcome, you are essentially claiming that you know exactly what is best for you, that the particular thing you are gripping is definitely the right thing, and that any other outcome would be a failure. But is that claim actually true? How many times in your life have you desperately wanted something, gripped it, grieved when it did not come, and then later realized that it was for the best that it did not, that what came instead was better, or that the thing you wanted would have been wrong for you in ways you could not see at the time? If you are honest, this has probably happened more than once, and it points to a humbling truth. You do not always know what is best for you. Your view is limited. You see a small piece of your life from inside a single moment, shaped by your current fears and desires. Life, the larger process, sees more. And letting go is partly the humble admission that the specific outcome you are gripping might not actually be the best thing for you, that you could be wrong about what you need, and that opening your hands allows something wiser than your limited view to bring you what actually fits. This is not passivity. It is humility, the recognition that your grip is based on a partial view, and that releasing it opens you to possibilities your limited perspective could never have planned. This does not require you to believe in any particular idea about the universe or a higher power, though if you do, it fits naturally. It only requires you to notice something you have probably already observed in your own life, that things often work out in ways you could not have planned or predicted, that the path forward frequently appears through doors you did not know existed, that life has a way of moving that is larger and more intelligent than your conscious control. You do not have to name this larger movement or explain it. You only have to stop insisting that your small, conscious plan is the only possible good outcome, and open yourself to the possibility that something beyond your planning might bring you something beyond your imagining. Jung spent much of his life exploring this larger movement in the psyche, the sense that there is a deeper intelligence at work in us and in our lives, guiding us toward wholeness in ways our conscious mind cannot see or direct. Whether you understand it in his terms or your own, the practical point is the same. Your conscious grip is not the only force working on your behalf, and when you release it, you make room for something wiser than your fear to help shape your life. And you will find that from this open place, not only do you feel lighter, but you begin to see options and paths that your grip had hidden from you completely. There is an image that captures this fifth sign perfectly. The image of a bird held in the hand. Imagine you love a wild bird and you want to keep it close. If you close your fist around it, gripping it tightly out of fear that it will fly away, you crush it, and you are left holding something broken and lifeless. The very grip that was meant to keep it is what destroys it. But if you hold it on an open palm, giving it complete freedom to leave, something remarkable can happen. The bird, unafraid, untrapped, may choose to stay. It may return to your open hand again and again, precisely because your hand is open. What you cannot force to stay through a closed fist, you can sometimes invite to stay through an open one. This is the deep truth about the things we love. We cannot keep them by gripping them, because the grip itself destroys what we are trying to keep. We can only hold them freely, with open hands, trusting that what truly belongs with us will choose to stay, and accepting that what does not was never ours to force in the first place. There is a trap in this fifth sign, though, and it is subtle. It is the temptation to turn letting go into a new form of control. People hear that letting go brings the things they want, and so they try to let go strategically as a technique to get what they want. They release their grip, but they release it while secretly watching, waiting, expecting the letting go to deliver the outcome they were gripping all along. But that is not letting go. That is just gripping in disguise, gripping with a longer leash, still demanding the same outcome while pretending to release it. True letting go is not a strategy to get what you want. It is a genuine willingness to accept whatever comes, including the possibility that you do not get the specific thing you were gripping. The paradox only works when the release is real, when you are genuinely willing to let life bring you something other than what you pictured. The moment letting go becomes a technique for getting your way, it stops being letting go, and the grip is right back where it was, just wearing a more spiritual costume. How long does it take to truly learn this? Longer than you want, and it comes in layers rather than all at once. You do not let go of everything in a single moment of enlightenment. You let go of one grip and feel the relief, and then discover a deeper grip underneath it, and let go of that, and find another beneath that. Letting go is not a single event, but a lifelong deepening, a gradual loosening of grip after grip after grip, each one revealing a subtler one underneath. And this is not discouraging, it is the opposite, because it means you do not have to let go of everything perfectly right now. You only have to loosen the grip that is most obvious to you today, and trust that the next layer will reveal itself when you are ready. The people who struggle most with this are the ones who expect to let go completely and permanently in one grand gesture, and then feel like failures when they find themselves gripping again. The ones who move through it most gracefully understand that letting go is a practice, not an achievement, a direction you keep turning toward rather than a destination you arrive at once and for all. And once you understand that letting go is not giving up but opening, you are finally ready to see what actually happens when you release the grip. Because it is not what the fearful part of you expects. The fearful part expects that if you let go, everything will fall apart. But the opposite is what actually happens, and that is the sixth sign. Number 6. What actually happens when you finally release? The fearful part of you has a prediction about what will happen if you let go. It predicts disaster. It believes that your grip is the only thing holding your life together, that if you release it, everything will collapse, the relationship will end, the goal will slip away. Everything you have worked for will fall apart. This prediction is the reason you keep gripping despite the exhaustion. Some part of you genuinely believes that letting go equals losing everything. But here's what actually happens when you finally release the grip, and it is almost the exact opposite of what the fear predicts. When you let go, things do not fall apart. They begin, at last, to fall into place. The first thing that happens is that a great weight lifts off of you. You have been carrying an enormous tension, the constant strain of trying to control everything, of holding your whole life together through sheer force of will. And you have carried it for so long that you have forgotten what it feels like to not carry it. When you finally set it down, when you release the grip, the relief is profound. The heart grows lighter, the mind grows quieter. The constant low hum of anxiety begins to fade. And from this lighter, quieter place, you suddenly have access to energy and clarity and creativity that were completely consumed before by the exhausting work of gripping. You feel like yourself again, maybe for the first time in years. The second thing that happens is that the things you were strangling begin to breathe again. The relationship you were gripping so tightly, when you finally give it room, begins to relax, to become natural and easy again. Because the person can finally feel that they are being loved instead of held captive. The work you were forcing so desperately, when you finally release your stranglehold on the outcome, begins to flow, because you have stopped getting in your own way with fear. The goal you were choking begins to come alive, because you have given it the room and the trust it needs to actually develop. Everywhere you release the grip, life begins to move again, because you have finally stopped strangling it. And the third thing that happens is the most surprising of all. The very things you most wanted, the things you were gripping so desperately, often begin to come toward you, precisely because you stopped chasing them with such fearful force. There is a strange law here that Jung understood deeply. Some things cannot come to you while you are gripping, because your grip repels them, chokes them, blinds you to them. And they can only arrive when you are open, light, and trusting enough to receive them. The person is drawn to your ease, not your desperation. The opportunity flows toward your openness, not your clenched control. The creative breakthrough arrives in the relaxed moment, not the forced one. This is why so often, the thing came only after you gave up gripping it. Not because giving up is magic, but because your grip was the very thing standing in its way. Let me tell you about a man I will call Daniel. Daniel had spent years gripping, forcing, controlling, exhausting himself in the desperate pursuit of the life he wanted, and getting further from it the harder he tried. And finally, worn down, defeated, he let go. Not in despair, but in a kind of surrender, a genuine release of his desperate grip on how it all had to go. He kept living, kept working, kept caring, but he released the stranglehold. And in the months that followed, to his complete astonishment, things began to come together in ways they never had while he was forcing. Opportunities appeared. A relationship deepened. His work, freed from the fear that had been strangling it, began to flourish. Daniel said later that the strangest lesson of his life was this: everything he had tried so hard to force into being had only arrived after he stopped forcing. The letting go was not the end of his pursuit. It was the thing that finally let his pursuit succeed. This is the deep truth at the center of everything we have explored tonight. Letting go is not losing. It is not giving up. It is not passive resignation. It is the release of the fearful grip that has been standing between you and everything you want. And when you finally release it, you do not lose your life. You get it back. Lighter, freer, more open, and finally able to receive the very things you were straining so hard to force. The things that fit you, the things that are truly meant for you, do not usually come through the clenched fist of control. They come through the open hand of trust. And the moment you finally open your hand, you discover that life has been waiting all along to place them there. You will know you are beginning to release the grip by a specific set of signs. You notice that you can think about the outcome you wanted without your whole body tensing. You find yourself able to consider that things might not go your way without spiraling into panic. You catch small moments of genuine ease, of not needing to control, of letting a situation simply unfold. You sleep a little better because the constant background calculation of how to control everything is quieted. You feel, sometimes, an unfamiliar lightness, as though you have set down a bag you did not know you were carrying. And perhaps most tellingly, you begin to notice possibilities and paths you were blind to before, because the tunnel vision of your grip has widened into something more open. If you recognize these signs, even faintly, you are beginning to let go, and the beginning is the hardest part. It gets easier from here, because each small experience of releasing without disaster teaches your nervous system that it is safe to open the hand, and that learning, once it begins, builds on itself. There is a trap in this sixth sign that catches people right when they start to see results. When people first experience the strange power of letting go, when they release their grip and watch good things start to flow, they sometimes conclude that letting go is a guaranteed formula for getting exactly what they want. And so they let go, and then they wait, expectantly, for the universe to deliver the specific outcome they released. And when it does not deliver that exact thing, they feel betrayed, cheated, as though letting go failed them. But this misunderstands the whole thing. Letting go is not a guarantee that you will get the specific outcome you wanted. It is a release of your demand for that specific outcome, which opens you to receive whatever is actually meant for you, which may be different from and better than what you were gripping, or may simply be a peace that does not depend on any outcome at all. If you let go while secretly still demanding a particular result, you have not let go, and the disappointment you feel when that result does not come is the proof that the grip was still there. True release means you are genuinely open to whatever comes. That openness, not a guaranteed outcome, is the real gift of letting go, and it is a gift that does not depend on getting your way. And this is where letting go becomes not just a path to what you want, but something even more valuable, a peace that does not depend on getting what you want at all. Because as long as your peace depends on outcomes, you will never truly have peace, since outcomes are never fully in your control and can always be taken away. But when you have learned to let go, when you have released your grip on needing things to go a particular way, you discover a peace that is not contingent on anything external. You can be at peace whether or not the outcome comes, because your peace no longer rides on the outcome. This is the deepest freedom of all, and it is the strange gift hidden inside the practice of letting go. You set out wanting a technique to get the things you were gripping, and you end up finding something far more valuable, a peace that does not depend on getting them. The things may come, and often they do, precisely because you released your grip, but the greater prize is the peace you find that no longer needs them to come at all. That peace is yours regardless, and nothing and no one can take it from you, because it is built not on any outcome but on your own capacity to hold your life with open hands. And notice how this peace changes your relationship to the future, which is where so much of our suffering lies. Most of our anxiety is really about the future, about what might happen, what might go wrong, what we might lose, and the grip is largely an attempt to control that uncertain future, to nail it down in advance, to guarantee that things will be okay. But the future cannot be controlled, and so this attempt produces only anxiety, the endless spinning of a mind trying to secure the unsecurable. When you learn to let go, you make peace with the fundamental uncertainty of being alive. You accept that you cannot know or control what is coming, and that this is simply the nature of existence, not a problem to be solved, but a truth to be accepted. And in that acceptance, a strange thing happens. The anxiety about the future begins to quiet, not because you have finally controlled the future, but because you have finally stopped trying to. You discover that you can meet whatever comes when it comes, that you do not need to secure the future in advance, that you are more resilient and more capable than your fear believed. And from that discovery grows a quiet confidence, not the false confidence of believing you can control everything, but the true confidence of knowing you can handle whatever comes, open-handed, as it arrives. There was a woman someone described to me, a woman I will call Rebecca, whose experience showed this with unusual clarity. Rebecca had spent years forcing a particular relationship to work, gripping a person who kept pulling away, controlling and clinging and strategizing, exhausting herself in the effort to make him love her the way she wanted. And the harder she gripped, the more he withdrew, which made her grip harder still, the whole cruel cycle we have described. Finally, worn out completely, Rebecca let go. Not as a strategy, but in genuine exhaustion and acceptance. She released her grip on him, made peace with the possibility of losing him, and turned her attention back to her own life. And two things happened. First, she discovered a peace she had not felt in years, a lightness that came simply from setting down the exhausting grip. And second, freed from the suffocating pressure of her control, the relationship itself changed, because for the first time the man could feel that he was with her by choice rather than by capture. Whether or not that particular relationship lasted, Rebecca had discovered the deeper truth. What she had been unable to force through years of gripping began to shift the moment she genuinely let go, because her grip had been the very thing poisoning what she was trying to create. There is a mechanism underneath this that is worth understanding, because it demystifies what can otherwise sound like magic. When you grip something out of fear, you radiate that fear, and other people and situations feel it, even if nothing is said. Desperation has a texture that repels. Neediness has a pressure that pushes people away. Anxious control has an energy that makes situations rigid and tense. So when you are gripping, you are not neutrally pursuing your goal. You are actively repelling it with the fear you are radiating. And when you let go, you stop radiating that fear. You become open, light, at ease. And that openness has its own texture, one that draws people and possibilities toward you rather than pushing them away. This is not mysticism. It is simply the reality that your inner state broadcasts itself into everything you do, and a state of fearful gripping broadcasts something that repels the very things you want, while a state of open trust broadcasts something that invites them. You are not manipulating the universe by letting go. You are simply stopping the self-sabotage that your gripping was causing all along. There is another dimension to what happens when you release, and it has to do with timing. So much of our gripping is really an impatience with time, a demand that the thing we want arrive now, on our schedule, according to our timeline. And this impatience is itself a form of the grip, a refusal to allow things to unfold in their own natural rhythm. But many of the things we most want cannot be rushed. They have their own timing, a season in which they can arrive and not before, and our frantic attempts to force them early only interfere with the very process that would bring them in time. The relationship that needs to develop slowly cannot be forced to deepen on command. The opportunity that requires certain conditions to align cannot be summoned before those conditions exist. The healing that takes the time it takes cannot be hurried by our impatience. When you let go, you release not just your grip on the outcome, but your grip on the timing, and you allow things to arrive when they are actually ready, rather than exhausting yourself trying to force them before their season. There is a deep peace in this, in trusting that what is meant for you will arrive in its own time, and that your job is not to force the timing but to be ready to receive what comes when it comes. The grip fights against time. The open hand moves with it. So how do you actually live this way? Day to day, in the real texture of your ordinary life. Because understanding it is one thing, and living it is another. That is what the seventh sign is about. The actual practice of holding your life with open hands. Number 7. The practice of holding life with open hands. Understanding all of this is one thing. Living it, in the ordinary texture of your daily life, is another. Because the grip is not just an idea. It is a deep physical, emotional habit, wired into your body and your nervous system over years and years of fearful holding. You cannot release it with a single decision. You release it the way you release any deep habit, through small, repeated, daily practice, in the ordinary moments where the grip shows up. So let me give you the actual practice of holding your life with open hands, the thing you can begin to do tomorrow morning and every day after. It begins the moment you wake up. Before you step into the day, before the momentum of your usual gripping takes over, pause, take a slow breath, and feel, honestly, what is inside you that is being gripped the hardest right now. What outcome are you clenching around? What are you afraid of losing? What are you trying to force? Just notice it without judgment, and then, gently, remind yourself of one thing. Today, I do not have to force everything to go my way. I can do what needs to be done, and I can also let life participate. I can hold what I want with open hands. This is not a grand resolution. It is a small, quiet reorientation at the start of the day, a setting of the inner tone before the day pulls you into its currents. Then, throughout the day, the practice becomes a matter of catching the grip in the act, because it will show up again and again in 100 small moments. You will feel yourself tensing to control an outcome, tightening around a conversation, gripping a plan that is not going the way you wanted, clenching against uncertainty. And each time you notice it, you do the same simple thing. You step back one small beat, you take a breath, and you consciously loosen, just slightly, the tightness of your hold. Not letting go of your responsibility, not abandoning what you are doing, only releasing the tension, the fear, the desperate need for control. You keep doing what needs to be done, but you do it from a slightly wider, slightly softer inner space. Step back one beat, loosen the grip, continue from a place of trust. That is the whole practice, repeated 100 times a day, until slowly, over weeks and months, the open hand becomes more natural than the clenched fist. And here is what to watch for as you practice, because it is the thing that will keep you going. Every so often, when you loosen the grip even slightly, you will notice life doing something it could not do while you were clenching. A conversation you released will resolve itself better than you could have forced. A situation you stopped controlling will open a path you had never seen. A relationship you gave room to will breathe easier. A problem you stopped strangling will untangle on its own. These small moments are the proof, the evidence your fearful mind needs, that letting go does not cause collapse but actually creates room for things to work out. Collect these moments. Notice them. Let them slowly teach your nervous system the truth that your fear has been denying, that the open hand works better than the clenched fist. There is one more part of this practice, and it is the deepest one, because it addresses the fear underneath everything. Remember that the grip is ultimately generated by the fear that you are not enough, that your worth depends on controlling these outcomes. So the deepest practice of all is to slowly build a sense of your own worth that does not depend on any particular outcome. To remind yourself, again and again, that you are enough regardless of whether this goes your way, that your value does not rise and fall with your success or failure at any single thing, that you can survive not getting what you want and still be whole, still be worthy, still be you. Because the more your worth rests on solid ground inside you, the less you need to grip the outcomes outside you, and the more naturally the open hand becomes your way of moving through the world. When you no longer need the thing to prove you are enough, you can finally hold it lightly, and in that lightness, it finally has room to come to you. So, begin tomorrow. Wake, breathe, notice what you are gripping, and set the intention to hold it with open hands. Move through your day, catching the grip and gently loosening it, again and again. Collect the small proofs that letting go works, and underneath it all, keep building the quiet, unshakable sense that you are enough, no matter what. This is not a single act of letting go. It is a daily practice, a slow retraining of a lifelong habit, and it works not through force but through patience, through the gentle repetition of choosing the open hand, one ordinary moment at a time. Let me give you one more concrete tool for this practice, because the grip is physical as much as mental, and sometimes the fastest way to loosen it is through the body. When you notice yourself gripping, tightening, clenching around some outcome, bring your attention to your actual hands. Very often, you will find that they are literally clenched or tense, a mirror of the psychological grip, and you can use the body to lead the mind. Consciously open your hands. Unclench your fingers. Let your palms rest open, soft, upturned, and take a slow breath as you do it. This simple physical act, opening your literal hands, sends a signal to your nervous system that it is safe to release, and the psychological grip often loosens along with the physical one. It seems almost too simple to work, but the body and the mind are not separate, and teaching your hands to open teaches your whole self to open. Use this in the hard moments, when the grip is strong and the mind cannot argue itself into letting go. Sometimes you cannot think your way out of the grip, but you can open your hands and let the body lead the way. And through all of this practice, the single most important quality to bring is gentleness with yourself. Because here is a trap that catches sincere people. They learn about letting go, they commit to the practice, and then they begin to grip the practice itself. They get frustrated with themselves for still gripping. They judge themselves harshly every time the old pattern returns. They turn letting go into one more outcome to force, one more thing to control, one more standard to grip themselves against. And in doing so, they miss the entire point, because you cannot force your way into letting go, and you cannot grip your way into an open hand. The practice has to be done gently, or it is not the practice at all. So when you notice yourself gripping, do not attack yourself for it. Meet it with kindness. Oh, there is the grip again. Of course it is here. It is an old habit, and it is okay. And gently, without self-judgment, open your hand once more. The gentleness is not a nice addition to the practice. It is the practice. Because the same fearful, self-attacking energy that drives you to grip your outcomes will, if you let it, drive you to grip your own healing. And the only way out of that trap is to bring to yourself the same open-handed gentleness you are learning to bring to your life. And I want to prepare you for the obstacle you will certainly meet, because it will come, and you should not mistake it for failure. As you practice letting go, there will be moments when the fear surges back, when something happens that triggers the old terror, and you find yourself gripping harder than ever, undoing weeks of practice in a single afternoon of panic. This is normal. This is not failure. The old grip is a deep habit, wired over decades, and it does not disappear in a straight line. It returns, sometimes with a vengeance, especially when you are tired or afraid or caught off guard. The practice is not to never grip again. That is impossible. The practice is to notice the grip when it returns, to be gentle with yourself about it, and to loosen it once more. You will loosen and re-grip, and loosen again 1,000 times. Each loosening counts. Each return to the open hand strengthens the new pattern, even when it is immediately followed by another grip. Do not measure your progress by whether you ever grip again. Measure it by how much more quickly you notice the grip and how much more gently you release it. Over time, the gaps of openness grow longer and the grips grow shorter, and that, not some final perfect release, is what healing actually looks like. It helps enormously to build reminders into your environment, because the grip is a strong habit, and your good intentions in the morning will be forgotten by the pressures of the afternoon. Find small physical anchors that will catch your attention throughout the day and remind you to check your grip. Some people keep a small stone in their pocket and let touching it be a cue to open their hands. Some set a quiet reminder on their phone a few times a day, a single word, loosen, or open, or trust. Some tie the practice to an existing habit, checking their grip every time they wash their hands, or walk through a doorway, or take a sip of water. The specific anchor does not matter. What matters is that you build in regular moments that interrupt the momentum of gripping and bring you back to the practice. Because without these reminders, the old habit will simply carry you along on autopilot, gripping all day, and you will not even notice until you are exhausted and tense at the end of it. The reminders are not a crutch. They are how a new habit is built, by catching the old one again and again until the new one becomes the automatic response. Use them without shame, for as long as you need them, and slowly the practice will become natural enough that you need them less. And be patient with the whole process, because learning to let go is not the work of a week or a month. It is the slow retraining of a pattern that took your entire life to build. There will be days when you feel you have made real progress, and days when you feel you have lost all of it and gone right back to gripping as hard as ever. This is not failure. It is simply what change looks like from the inside. Uneven, circling, 2 steps forward and 1 step back. What matters is not any single day, but the overall direction, the slow trend, over months and years, toward a more open way of holding your life. Do not expect yourself to master this quickly, and do not judge yourself when you find yourself gripping again, because the judgment is just another grip. Simply keep turning, again and again, toward the open hand, and trust that the repeated turning is doing its slow work even when you cannot feel it. The oak does not become an oak in a season, and you will not become a person of open hands in one either. But every time you loosen your grip, even for a moment, even imperfectly, you are becoming that person, one small release at a time. And the becoming is happening whether or not you can see it on any given day. And as you practice this, over weeks and months, something begins to change in you at a level deeper than any single outcome. You begin to become a different kind of person. And that is the final thing I want to show you, who you become when you finally learn to live with open hands. Number 8, who you become when you stop forcing. When you practice this over time, when you slowly release the grip and learn to hold your life with open hands, you do not just change your results, you change who you are. A different kind of person begins to emerge, one who moves through the world in a fundamentally different way than the exhausted, gripping person you used to be. And this transformation is the deepest gift of the entire journey, far deeper than any single thing you wanted and finally received. The first thing that changes is that you become lighter. The constant tension you carried, the low grinding anxiety of trying to control everything, begins to lift, and it does not come back in the same way. You move through your days with a spaciousness you had forgotten was possible. Things that used to send you into a panic of controlling now pass through you more easily. You still care, still work, still pursue what matters, but the desperate weight is gone. People feel it when they are around you. There is an ease to you, a groundedness that draws them in rather than pushing them away. You have become someone who is pleasant to be near because you are no longer radiating the tension of a person trying to force the world into shape. The second thing that changes is that you become more trusting, not in a naive way, but in a deep and earned way. Having practiced letting go again and again, having watched life work out in ways your grip could never have forced, you develop a genuine trust in the larger process of your own life. You stop believing that everything depends on your control. You start believing, from real experience, that you can release your grip and things will be okay, often better than okay. And this trust changes everything, because it is the ground that peace grows in. The person who trusts can rest. The person who grips never can. And you have become, slowly, a person capable of rest, capable of peace, capable of moving through even uncertain times without the frantic clenching that used to define you. The third thing that changes is the deepest. You become free, free from the exhausting tyranny of needing everything to go your way, free from the belief that your worth depends on controlling outcomes, free from the fear that has been driving you, underneath everything, for your entire life. You discover that you can want things deeply and still be at peace whether or not they come, that you can love fully and still hold the people you love with open hands, that you can pursue your dreams with everything you have and still be whole regardless of whether you achieve them. This is a freedom most people never know, the freedom of a person who has stopped basing their entire sense of self on things they cannot control. And it is available to you on the other side of the grip. Jung believed that the goal of a human life is to become whole, to integrate all the parts of ourselves into a self that is grounded, free, and true. And the journey of letting go is a central part of that wholeness, because so much of what fragments us is the fearful grip, the desperate control, the endless forcing that keeps us at war with our own lives. When you release that grip, you are not just getting better results, you are becoming whole. You are becoming the person you were always meant to be underneath the fear. A person who can hold their life lightly, love freely, pursue deeply, and rest in the trust that they are enough regardless of any outcome. That person was always in there. The grip was just covering them, and every time you choose the open hand, you let a little more of that person emerge. There is a fourth quality that emerges in the person who has truly learned to let go, and it is perhaps the most beautiful of all. They become generous, not just with their money or their time, but with life itself. The person who grips is fundamentally in a posture of scarcity, clutching what little they have, terrified of loss, unable to give freely because giving feels like losing. But the person who has learned to hold life with open hands lives from a different posture entirely, a posture of trust and abundance, and from that place, generosity flows naturally. They can give without keeping score, love without demanding return, offer their gifts without gripping the outcome, because they are no longer operating from the fearful scarcity that makes a person clutch and hoard. This generosity is not a virtue they force themselves to practice. It is the natural overflow of a person who has stopped gripping, who trusts that they will be okay, who holds even their own giving with open hands. And it is one of the surest signs that the letting go has become real, when you find yourself able to give freely what you once would have clutched in fear. I want to leave you with a picture of this person, because it is who you are becoming, and it helps to be able to see them clearly. Imagine someone who wants things deeply, but grips nothing in fear, who works hard but is not driven by desperation, who loves fully but holds the people they love with open hands, giving them freedom rather than capture, who pursues their dreams with everything they have but remains whole and at peace whether or not those dreams arrive, who can meet uncertainty without panic, loss without collapse, disappointment without despair, because their sense of worth no longer rides on any particular outcome. There is a lightness to this person, a groundedness, a quiet strength that does not need to control anything to feel secure. Some people, hearing all of this, feel a quiet resistance rise up, a fear that if they let go of their gripping, they will lose their drive, their ambition, their edge. They have come to believe that their fearful control is the engine of their success, that without the anxious pressure, they would become complacent and achieve nothing. And this fear is worth addressing directly, because it keeps many capable people locked in a gripping that is actually costing them. The truth is that fear is a terrible long-term fuel. It works for a while, driving you hard, but it burns you out, corrodes your health, poisons your relationships, and eventually undermines the very performance it was driving. The people who sustain excellence over a lifetime are almost never running on fear. They are running on something deeper and steadier, a genuine love of what they do, a grounded commitment, a trust that lets them work hard without destroying themselves. Letting go of the fearful grip does not make you lose your drive. It replaces a drive that was slowly killing you with one that can actually last. You do not become less ambitious when you let go. You become sustainably ambitious, able to pursue what matters to you for the long haul, without the fear that was going to burn you out before you ever arrived. You will know the letting go is becoming real in you by a set of quiet signs. You notice you can want something deeply and still sleep at night. You find you can work hard toward a goal and still enjoy your life along the way, rather than postponing all joy until the goal is achieved. You catch yourself trusting, in small moments, that things will be okay even without your control. You feel the old grip return and you release it more quickly than you used to, with less struggle and less self-judgment. You begin to hold the people you love more freely, giving them room to be themselves, and you notice the relationships breathing easier as a result. And underneath it all, you feel a growing steadiness, a sense of being okay that does not depend so heavily on things going your way. These are the signs that the open hand is becoming your natural way of holding your life. They come gradually, not all at once, and you may not notice them until you look back and realize how much lighter you have become. But they are the fruit of the practice, the slow, quiet evidence that you are becoming a person who holds their life with open hands. You have probably met one or two people like this, and you remember how it felt to be near them, how safe, how easy, how free. That is who you are becoming. Not through force, not through gripping your way to some perfect state, but through the gentle, patient, daily practice of opening your hands. The very thing you could never achieve by forcing, you become by releasing. And that is the final and deepest paradox of this whole journey. And this new way of being does not stay contained within you. It ripples outward into everyone your life touches. The people around you have been living, whether they knew it or not, inside the field of your gripping, absorbing your tension, meeting your control, feeling the weight of your fear. And as you learn to hold your life with open hands, they feel that change too. The people you love feel the difference between being gripped and being held freely, and they can breathe again around you. The people who work with you feel the difference between your anxious control and your grounded trust, and they do better work in the ease you now create rather than the tension you use to radiate. Even your children, if you have them, absorb this change most deeply of all, because a parent who grips teaches their children to grip, and a parent who has learned to hold life with open hands gives their children the priceless gift of a different model, a way of being in the world that is not ruled by fear. Your letting go is not only for you, it is a gift to everyone who lives inside the field of your presence, everyone who will now get to experience the lighter, freer, more trusting person you are becoming. The grip harms more than yourself, and the release blesses more than yourself. That is perhaps the most beautiful reason of all to finally open your hands. And in the end, all of this comes back to a single, simple truth that Jung pointed toward again and again in his work. The journey of a human life is a journey home to yourself, to the whole, true self that was there underneath all the fear and all the adaptation from the very beginning. And the grip, the control, the endless forcing is one of the great things that keeps you exiled from that self. Because a person locked in fearful control is not living from their true center. They are living from their fear. So when you learn to let go, you are not just improving your results or reducing your stress. You are coming home. You are returning to the self that does not need to grip because it knows, at a deep level, that it is enough, that it is safe, that it will be okay. That self was always there, waiting underneath the fear, and every time you open your hands, you take one more step back toward it. This is why letting go feels, when it is real, not like a loss, but like a homecoming, because you are not losing anything that was truly yours. You are setting down a burden that was never yours to carry, and returning, lighter and freer, to the self you were always meant to be. And if tonight you are tired, if you have been gripping for so long that you cannot even remember what it feels like to hold your life with open hands, I want you to know that it is not too late, and you are not too far gone, and the ache in your clenched fists is not permanent. The capacity to open your hands has been there all along, waiting underneath the fear, and it responds to the smallest invitation. You do not have to release everything tonight. You do not have to become a person of perfect, open-handed trust by morning. You only have to loosen one grip, even slightly, even for a moment, and feel the small relief of it, and let that relief begin to teach you that there is another way to live. That is enough for tonight. One small loosening, one breath, one moment of holding something a little less tightly than you did a moment ago. From that small beginning, everything else can slowly grow, because the whole journey of letting go is made of exactly these small releases, one after another, each one teaching you a little more deeply that you are safe, that you are enough, and that the life you want was never going to come through the clenched fist, but is waiting, even now, for the opening of your hands. So picture it, one last time, as clearly as you can. Your whole life, you have been walking through the world with your fists clenched, holding on so tightly to everything you feared to lose that your hands have forgotten how to open. And they ache, those clenched fists. Though you have held them shut so long, you have stopped noticing the ache. Now imagine, slowly, those hands beginning to open. Imagine the fingers, stiff from years of gripping, gradually uncurling. Imagine the palms turning upward, open to the sky, no longer clutching, no longer straining, simply open and receiving. Feel the relief of it, the ache draining out of hands that have finally been allowed to rest. And notice what happens in that openness. All the things you are gripping so desperately do not vanish the moment you open your hands. Some of them rest there still, on the open palm, staying not because you force them, but because they choose to. And into the open space that your unclenched hands have created, new things begin to arrive, things that could never have reached a closed fist, settling gently onto palms that are finally open to receive them. This is the life that waits for you on the other side of the grip. Not an empty life, not a life of having given up, but a life of open hands, holding what is truly yours with a gentleness that lets it stay, and receiving what is meant for you in the space your letting go has finally made. So if you are tired tonight, tired of gripping, tired of forcing, tired of the exhausting work of trying to control everything, I want you to hear this. You do not have to keep holding on so tightly. The life you want is not going to come through the clenched fist. It is going to come through the open hand. And the moment you begin to loosen your grip, even a little, you will feel the weight start to lift, and you will begin to sense the truth that has been waiting for you all along. Letting go is not losing. It is returning to a lighter, freer, truer version of yourself. Returning to a way of living that is not ruled by fear. And returning, at last, to the open-handed trust in which the things that truly belong to you finally have the room to find their way home. If something in you has loosened tonight, even slightly, if you have felt the invitation to set down the grip you have been carrying for so long, then let this channel be a companion for the road ahead. Because learning to live with open hands is not a single decision but a practice, and it helps to have a voice in the quiet, reminding you of what you are learning. Subscribe and stay close, and let these reflections keep meeting you on the days when the old grip returns, and you need to be reminded that you can loosen it again. There is far more of this inner work still to explore together: the release of the fears we carry, the healing of the wounds that make us grip, the long journey home to a self that is finally at peace. But for tonight, rest, loosen your hold, and trust that the moment you finally stop forcing, the very things you have been longing for will begin, at last, to find their way to you. Thank you for being here with me. I will see you in the next video.